Just wanted to let everyone know that this will be recorded. Um, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to use the chat feature. We will try to address all the questions throughout the presentation. My name is Jackie. I am the marketing manager at Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union, and thank you for joining us today. There have been a lot of changes since COVID has come to us. So as far as how that affects college planning, we have Suzanne Wilkins from Credit Union Student Choice, who's going to hopefully answer all those questions for you. Suzanne, if you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you for Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union for having me today. I'm the Director of Strategic Partners, and we partner up with Mass Mutual, and we present these WebExes every so often. And they're always fun and well attended. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be here with you for the next hour or so. So I think to just jump in here, right? If I can get my cursor to work. There we go. A lot of people, especially now with college costs going through the roof, they question, is college important? Why should we even go? And you do have to ask that question and hopefully able to turn to some of the resources to give you those answers. And, we're going to start from here, right? We know that someone with a 4-year degree earns a lot more over their career than someone compared to someone that earns their high school diploma, right? We see a little over $1 million more they earn. Also, the unemployment rates are much lower for the 4-year degree holder versus the high school diploma student, almost half less than the high school diploma person. So we know it is important. And, one of the other questions that follows up that question is, how do you prepare for this investment, this 2-year or this 4-year investment? Because there's a lot of pressure on the wallet. There's a lot of other pressures, but the number one pressure is the wallet. So we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. But first, how do we prepare for all of this, right? So I'm going to be focusing in more so on the juniors and seniors in this group, but I also want to address the students that are not even in high school yet. How do they prepare? We're not expecting them to choose a career at this point, obviously, but we do want them to start getting involved in their community, right? With an eye towards building a student resume, because student resumes start on day 1 of grade 9 and go through the last day of senior year. So make sure they start exploring ways that they can contribute to their community. Develop smart study habits is another way to prepare for what's coming down the road. Focusing on the big picture, like I said, they don't need to pick a career, but they need to know what's out there. What are they interested in? What is the level of income they should be expecting once they make that decision to go down that path? And then, of course, saving money. Saving money is going to be critical in terms of ways that we can sort of cut costs down the road for college. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, specifically for the student, even if they save $5 a month in an account, that is going to matter down the road for a very specific reason that I'll talk about later on. Freshmen and sophomore students, again, now they should be actively looking at careers, maybe going to a high school guidance counselor, talking to their parents, talking if they should have an opportunity to volunteer, talking to those adults that are supervising them. It's also very good to have college prep classes in your resume. The chances of getting into college is a little bit higher if you have, college prep courses, as well as potentially advanced placement courses. Advanced placement courses are courses given in high school, usually junior and senior year. However, I've seen some high schools offer it to freshmen and sophomores, depending on the subject matter. And what this allows someone to do is test out of college credits. At the end of the class, you take this test. Of course, there is a cost for the test. And then later on, you can, test out of credit, college credits, right? My youngest daughter did this, and she tested out, I don't know how many college AP college courses she had while she was in high school, but during her college stint, she was able to graduate 6 months earlier, saving us a lot of money, probably around $20,000, because she tested out of those courses. Now, the only issue that I've seen in the past with students that get the AP college classes assigned to them is that they don't take the extra effort to test at the end of the class, because I think there's like a $65 fee, and I could be mistaken. It's been a long time since my kids were in college. So something that you have to explore, make sure they test out to get those college credits on their resume. Now, juniors, this is when it starts getting critical to be mindful of deadlines. You're going to be taking your ACTs, your SATs. There's some scholarship opportunities that you're going to have to explore. I would recommend exploring those opportunities at the end of your junior year. So the summer going into your senior year, you're going to want to spend some time. I usually like to, encourage students to at least spend an hour to an hour and a half every week during the summer months. Treat it like a part-time job in order to actually, see fruits of your labor. And we're going to talk a little bit more again about scholarship opportunities in a few minutes. Financial aid events, make sure you attend these types of WebExes, seminars as much as you can. There's a lot of information, a lot of terminology, and the more that you can arm yourself with understanding, the more money it saves in your pocket. And then obviously juniors will start your college visits, and we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about that on the next slide because COVID-19 has affected that dramatically. Now, seniors, you're going to start applying for colleges if you haven't already. Now is the time to do it, right? It's an exciting time. You're going to be filling out more than likely a Common App. You can go to your college website to determine which app that they want you to fill out. And hopefully everyone has started or has completed their FAFSA form. Again, we're going to go into that in a few minutes. It's the financial aid form for students that want federal money. And they release it every October 1st. They release the form every October 1st. And you have to complete this every year that you are attending school. So we also want seniors to be active, obviously, and stay focused. We don't need anyone having their grades fall at this time, right? Don't have a case of the senioritis, although it's very, very tempting. You're in the home stretch, don't give up yet. So those are the steps, just some of the steps to prepare for college. Now, we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about COVID-19 and how it affects this pathing towards getting into school and what you should be expecting. Your credit union, Mass Mutual, has a website, I have it up on the slide now, that you can get information on how colleges are handling the pandemic. So I encourage you to go to that website as a resource for the latest and greatest information. So juniors, college planning through this crisis, this pandemic, right? Visits to colleges and admission events may be canceled during this. I know that a lot have been, and every state is different in how they're approaching this. So I would turn to a lot of virtual websites. Like I do recommend maybe going to virtual collegefair.org or a campustours.com in order to do this. You'll get a lot of information on the colleges that you're interested in. Testing dates may be canceled or delayed for the SATs or SATs, depending on what's going on in your area. Same thing with AP tests. You might have to make up a test. Future dates could be impacted depending on the state's protocols for isolating people, right? So we have to be very aware of your college website and your high school website, because those two things are going to keep you up to date, latest and greatest on what is going on. Schools might have to close nationally. We've seen that, right? And that means that there are big disruptions to coursework and extracurricular activities as well. Colleges are going to take this into consideration when looking at your application. So don't worry too much about if you can't do your extracurricular activities. This is very weird times that we're in, and everyone is taking that into account. College financial aid policies may be impacted. So I think a lot of times, we as parents and as students, we're starting to prepare ourselves for the cost of this. And we might go out to different websites to use what they're called the net price calculator, which is a really good tool. Every college has it on their website. But what you have to be aware of, and especially these times, is that the net price calculators are based on past tuition rates and past enrollment rates. It does not take into account what's been happening this past year. Enrollment has been down for on campus, and that greatly affects a college financial book, so to speak, right? We're seeing the smaller colleges starting to struggle financially. We're starting to see perhaps some smaller colleges raise their tuition and fees because of it. So just be aware that this is a very different environment that you're in, not standard protocol at all. I always encourage you to reach out to the financial aid office of the college that you're interested in. They will answer any questions that you have, especially during this year. Now, seniors, again, college visits are going to be limited, right? If you haven't been, just take advantage of the virtual tours that are going out there, ongoing. They're getting very crafty in their content. So again, I would encourage that. Admitted students might have more time to make their college decisions, as colleges have changed their deposit deadlines in light of all of these disruptions. We saw that this past year. Usually everyone nationally has to make up their mind by May 1st. And we saw some universities go out and extend that deadline. That's the first I've ever seen, actually. So make sure, again, that you're aware of the deadlines. Go check the website of the school that you're interested in. They're saying that we're going to continue to see impacts of this coronavirus until the end of next year. So it's something that's going to have to be, routine. This is the new norm, is depending more on technology. Now, we understand that there's a great economic uncertainty right now in the financial sector. And what that means for financial aid is going to be very interesting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. But I encourage students that are thinking about going into a major, think about what we have been going through as an economy right now. The biggest jobs that have been hit is the service industry, small businesses, retail businesses. So, I'm not discouraging you from going into that field, but just know that, COVID-19 did play a big part in that. Okay. However, if you were on the fence and you were thinking about a medical field, a medical major, right? Um, business there has been, unfortunately booming. Even before COVID-19, I always said that the medical field, you'll never have to worry about a job in that sector, right? So those are the things that you might want to discuss with your guidance counselor. It's bringing to light certain majors that have been affected by this COVID-19. Now, also seniors, when you're getting ready to go off to college, I think you'll have to prepare a little bit differently than others have in the past, right? So what do I mean by that is we're in this environment now where we could, in a heartbeat, go from on-campus living to virtual learning, right? If there's an outbreak on your campus, they might require you to go back in your dorms and learn from your dorms. So what does that mean for you? Well, it might mean that you have to get better camera equipment or more, higher video content, resolution, so to speak, right? You might have to purchase noise canceling earphones, right? If you are in a room with another student, or maybe in a suite with 3 other students, and you have to switch over to a virtual learning environment, are you going to be able to cope with 3 other people learning at the same time? So you might want to invest in some earphones, right? So those are the things that you have to take into account during this COVID-19 pandemic thing. A very different environment indeed. So now we have the COVID behind us for the most part. Let's talk a little bit about scholarships, right? So there are 2 different types of scholarships. There are the ones that can be had privately through maybe church organizations, civic groups, your employer, your parents' employer might have an opportunity for scholarships. Those are called the private scholarships. And then there are the scholarships issued by the federal government that are obtained by filling out your FAFSA form. Okay, so again, we'll talk about those in a few minutes, but let's talk a little bit more about those private scholarships, the ones that are given without filling out that FAFSA form. Again, start at the end of 11th grade to look for scholarships and never stop until you graduate college. A lot of times high school students will, do their due diligence on the scholarships, and then they won't look at it for the next 4 years. I encourage you to do it every year, okay? Private scholarships are awarded based on need or merit for a variety of different reasons. You could have, there's one scholarship out there for someone with brown hair or writing with your left hand. So there's so much money to be had out there. It is surprising once you start digging into it. And the award amounts might vary. So why is that important? Well, you have to understand how the scholarship works, okay? Is it just one lump sum, one and done, so to speak? They're going to give you $1,000 and then, you never hear from them again? Or are they going to give you $4,000, $1,000 every year, right? So you need to understand how they are given to you. And also, it's also important with these private scholarships to understand how your college is going to handle them in your financial aid package. With my oldest daughter, she got a lot of private scholarships. I think it was about $5,000, if I can recall, somewhere around there. And the university that she went to took that away from her financial aid package. So some colleges do that. More than likely now they don't, because the competition to get students on campus or enrolled is really high. So that's one of the upsides of this COVID thing, right? They're trying to get more people on campus. So they might entice you in different ways like that. So just be aware of that little tip. Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union offers a scholarship program. I think that they have already awarded it this year, but I say it so that you can be aware of it. It is ongoing. Every year they get together and they award 10 $2,000 scholarships, which is tremendous. They also are affiliated with what's called the Pioneer Valley chapter that also awards 8 $2,000 scholarships. And then the Cooperative Credit Union Association awards one $1,500 scholarship. So always keep your eye on your credit union's website for qualification and deadlines. Another way to get private scholarships is through the website, right? So these are the main websites that we like. One of the things that I always pull out on this is the Scully emblem, the one with the dog there. That is actually an app for your phone. It's free. They do have a premium level too, but the free one is just as good. And what it does is that the student will input a few questions about themselves, you know, their intended major, their GPA, and what it shoots back to them is all of the scholarships that are available that week, that day, that month, whatever. And it gives you deadlines, the amount of the scholarship, if they have to write an essay, where do they have to submit it to, all of that information. It also has essay templates in there that your students can use as a guide, right? So it's a very good tool to use. Now, scholarship tips. Okay, please follow all the instructions given. There is a scholarship out there that has instructions 30 pages long, but the reward is significant. It's a $10,000 scholarship. I don't know if it's still out there yet. I think I saw it a few years ago. I don't know if it's still out there, but you know, this is just for an example, right? If they ask you to write it out in red crayon, that's what you're going to do. If you don't follow their instructions carefully, that's one way of vetting that out, right? They're just going to put you in the garbage pile, right? So just be cautious of that. Use reference letters when they're asked for, right? So you're going to ask, you know, obviously the guidance counselor sends off a reference letter, you know, your favorite teacher, but it also could be a pastor. It could be someone that you work with if you volunteer your time. It could be a coach. Just make sure that you make it as easy as possible for them to put that reference letter together, right? So you might want to, as you're asking them, give them your student resume of all of your achievements so that they can focus on your character and your personality, not wondering if you are a member of the National Honor Society, right? So just make it easier for those people that have to write the letters, because usually some of those people are very popular with other high school students, and they have a pile of them to write. So just know that you know, they're doing their best, and if you can make it as easy as possible for them, that'd be great. Highlight any community involvement and charity work that you do. That's very important. Include your job history. So if you have a part-time job, that is super important to note, because when someone sits on a scholarship committee and they see, maybe you don't, you know, you haven't joined some extracurricular activities. Well, why? Why is that? Well, if they see a part-time job, you know, that sort of compensates for that, right? So they understand that in your application. Now, if you have to write an essay, whether it's for scholarships or whether it's for your college essay, make sure you take the time, the energy, and the effort to do it. Make sure you get someone else to look at it before you send it off, right? The last thing that you want is any grammatical errors when you send that off. I also encourage students, juniors especially, that summer after your junior year to maybe sign up for an essay boot camp. There are so many out there. You can ask your guidance counselor or you can Google it. There's many boot camps out there, and you walk out with maybe 2 or 3 solid essays so that you don't have to worry about writing an essay and applying to all these colleges in your senior year. You can enjoy the process a little bit more if you have those essays in your back pocket. And beware of scams, right? Scholarships are free. You shouldn't have to pay for them. There are some companies out there that charge you a fee and guarantee you a scholarship amount, but they don't tell you how much. So it could be $50. You have, there might be a fee of 250, but you get back 50. Not very cool in my book. So just be aware of the scams out there. And one last thing, in terms of scholarship tips and stories, I tell this story every time. I have a colleague that served on a scholarship committee that was giving out a $40,000 scholarship, very significant scholarship. And this young man won it. And they had a press event around issuing that to him and have had the media there. And the young man went to each of the committee members to thank them and ask them, what was it that won him that scholarship? Because he wanted to get the 411 on that, right? Was it his grades? What is his extracurricular activities? What was it? And it was amazing, true story. They looked at him and said he was the only one that applied. That blew me away when I heard that. And it's a really good lesson to learn, right? But then it took me back to my two girls when they were applying for scholarships. And my oldest one, at the end of the day, during her junior year, at the end of her junior year, I would ask her, how are you doing on your scholarship hunting? And she would give me a list, of what she applied for. And then I would go to my youngest one later on and ask her the same thing. And she would say, well, I didn't find any out there. Sometimes, our self-esteem, our opinions of ourselves might be lower than we think, or lower than what the definition of a scholarship is. So I encourage everyone to apply for everything. If you have the time, if you can take the time, I would do that, because that was a tremendous lesson to learn. And we need to encourage everyone to apply for as many as you can. Now, scholarship mistakes, applying for only private, that's not what you should do. You should apply for both private and federal. Applying for too few, treat it like a part-time job. Instruction and application mistakes, just be careful and cautious of how you complete your applications. Be aware of deadlines and be persistent, right? You're going to get there. I know you will, and try to make it fun. Now, the next step is choosing a college, right? That's a really tough thing to do. How do you start it? Where do you begin if you have no clue where you want to go? Well, there are a few questions that you should be asking yourself, right? These are the questions. Some of these questions are really important. What are the graduation statistics of the college? What's the job placement rate, right? We've got to understand that if we're taking out student loans, like most of us do, some of us don't, but most of us do, you have to understand what the job placement rate is, right? If they participate in financial student aid, the federal student aid program, well, why is that important? Well, if you think that you're going to need aid, whether privately or through the federal government, number one, you've got to understand the types of federal aid that are out there that the school gets. Now, federal aid is considered not just scholarships and grants, but it's also considered loans. So if the school says that they participate in federal aid and that they give out a lot of federal aid, well, your next question should be, what type of federal aid do you give out? If it's the majority of it is student loans, then, well, that's a different story than another college that might be giving out a substantial amount of money in scholarships and grants, right? So we would encourage you. There are so many tools out there that you can use to answer those basic questions, but one that we recommend is this website found on the bottom of the slide. It's nces.ed.gov/college navigator. So what you do is you just answer a few basic questions, the type of institution you're looking for, whether it's public or private. You might ask yourself, why is that important? Well, this is another COVID tip. Public and private schools are going to be affected in different ways, okay? And especially with, what's happening with the new administration, the new president-elect, right? We've got to understand how schools work and use it to our advantage. So public schools count on the government for funding, right? The Department of Education. Whereas private schools depend on alumni, legacy, right? They have deeper pockets. They're funded in a different way other than the federal government. So if the federal government has dramatic cuts, guess what's going to happen to public schools? They're going to also have cuts, and then they're going to boost their tuition fees up, right? Private schools, not so much. They don't depend on the federal government, okay? The only thing that I would caution you against private versus public is that private, I would look to see how much they increase their tuition year over year, okay? But for the most part, I was very pleasantly surprised when my two daughters applied that they both got into a private school because the financial aid package was that much lower than the public one. So I always encourage people to apply to a private school as well as public schools, because you never know, there are some good public school financial aid packages out there too. But that's why those things are important, right? So that's where you would find this. Now, when you're using a College Navigator or any tool, make sure that you understand that you are building a 4-year budget, okay? And this College Navigator will estimate those costs for you over the 4-year term, okay? So that's another reason why to use these websites. They're very good at predicting, for the most part, what tuition and fees will be. Now, when you apply to colleges, what gets you in, right? Well, we think that there are 7 keys. Core strength, whether or not you have college prep, AP courses, general courses. Your overall GPA is a strong factor. Test scores, strong factor. Essays, demonstrated interest, teacher council recommendations, and extracurricular activities. Now, test scores, the thing about that, interesting thing about that this year is that we saw some, a little bit more universities and colleges not using test scores because of the pandemic. It was harder for people to navigate taking the SATs and, retaking it at another, deadline date. So some schools sort of waived that option. Demonstrated interest. This usually is you either going to the campus and taking a tour, but it also includes, especially amidst COVID, the email system becomes very important. Your computer becomes very important in this demonstrated interest, okay? Any email that is sent to you by a school now, and even before this whole thing happened, but especially now, is going to be monitored by the college under demonstrated interest. They will tick a box on their end to see if someone has opened up their email. They will tick a box if you've done a virtual tour. They will especially tick a box if you participate in a virtual college fair or a tour, and you ask a question or you're on camera. You have to stand out from the crowd now, and it's going to be really hard to do that. So demonstrated interest is all of those things. In the normal course of events, I would recommend that even parents of younger students, when this whole pandemic thing is over, make sure when you go on campus to visit, even if it's for a non-official visit, just to tour the campus on your own, make sure you let someone know in the admissions office that you did that. because it goes towards demonstrated interest and it helps your chances of getting into college. Another thing that you might be required to do with some colleges is go on an interview. Again, this can be found on their website. And an interview could be, obviously, it would probably be over a Zoom meeting. So make sure you are camera ready when you go to that appointment. Now, beware, college offers of admissions are conditional, right? If you start putting more deposits down at more than one college, colleges talk to each other. And they're going to start thinking, oh, maybe they're not so serious coming on board here than they are with, with someone else, right? So, why do you think that would be important? Well, these college admissions officers take time in calling through all of these applications, number one. And number two, once they find a really good candidate, they put together a financial aid package, right? So if you have one student putting deposits in at 5 colleges, they're sort of tying up that system, right? So that's why they get a little bit testy about that. A change in your grades, if you see, if you get into a college and you have a significant decrease in your grades, they might withdraw that admissions offer. Lapse in judgment or integrity, or lying or misrepresentation of the facts presented in the application interview. So I just want to caution, in this age of social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of this, Instagram, just be careful of what you post out there, because colleges are really honing in on this now. Okay, so just make sure that you clean up your Facebook pages. Make sure that there's nothing out there that they can judge you on that would take their admissions office away from you, excuse me. Again, the importance of ethics, we went through this. The one thing that I do want to pull out of this is inform your colleges if you've been accepted elsewhere and you choose not to go to them, okay? If you've applied to 5 or 6 colleges and you get into all of them, and obviously you're going to make a choice of one of the 6, make sure that you tell the other 5, okay, that you're not going there, because it frees up that financial aid money for someone else that could be waitlisted or seeking more money later on, okay? So, cost of an education, right? This is where it gets kind of serious now. I put this slide up not to alarm you, but to educate you. I'm going to pull out the 2nd bar and the 4th bar. The 2nd bar is your public 4-year in-state on-campus experience, and the 4th bar is the private nonprofit experience. So as you can see, the average yearly cost for the public is $25,890. The private school is about $52,500. Now, these are national averages. Because we live in the Northeast and we have the availability to a lot of wonderful universities and colleges, those numbers are actually higher. They're probably about $31,000, $32,000 for public, and about at least starting at $62,000 for the private. I've seen them go up as high as $71,000. So the other reason why I'm pulling this slide to your attention is, you see the dark blue areas on each of these bars. Those that represents the tuition fees. That's non-negotiable. It is what it is. But anything beyond that, room and board, books and supplies, tuition, transportation, or other expenses, all of those can be controlled based on the decisions that we make. And we're going to talk about the decisions in a few minutes. So you could potentially decrease those other expenses over time. So now we're going to talk a little bit about this pathway, the seniors' pathway to college, right? So the first thing that they should do is complete the FAFSA form, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes, because again, it becomes available October 1st. and federal aid is first come, first serve. So the quicker that you have that form filled out, the better the chances are that you will get financial aid. So you complete the FAFSA form, then you complete your application for college, and hopefully you get accepted, right? So you start getting letters in the mail in December and January, even February. And now you've got to determine the cost of attendance, right? And it's usually will come with the acceptance letter. You'll get a nice financial aid package, right? Then you need to visit your financial aid officer if you have any questions about that. So again, to get a little bit more granular in this path, okay, when you do complete the FAFSA form, the reason why you're completing it is to get your expected family contribution sent to the colleges that you're interested in, and also the government needs to know what your family's expected contribution is, right? Those results from the FAFSA form will be sent to your student under their email, their personal email. It will not be sent to the parent, even though there's your information on your income, your demographics and everything, that will be sent to your student. So ask your student if they received it, okay? Usually they'll receive it about 2 to 4 weeks after they've completed the FAFSA form, okay? Again, with COVID, I'm not sure if that is holding things up. I would imagine it wouldn't, but just in case, I would, you know, if you're expecting the student record, that report, the expected family contribution to come back and it hasn't, just give them a call. So that form that your student gets is called a SAR report, a student account record. That will show them what the expected family contribution is, right? At the same time the student gets that report, the school gets an ISA report, okay? That's the institutional student information record. Same information that your student got, but now the college has received it so that they can prepare their financial aid, okay? So that's basically how it all lays out, okay? So when you do complete your FAFSA form, and you're going to be completing it every year, you're going to need to go to the fafsa.ed.gov site. Any other site is the wrong site and you might have to pay for it. Okay, so this is a free application. You have to fill out your students' demographic information, as well as any financial information and the parents as well. Okay, so every year you're going to fill this out as soon as you can, okay? And hopefully you'll do it online rather than paper. Online is quicker to get the results back, right? Paper, it takes about 6 weeks to get the results back. So, you know, I just couldn't wait that long. I would just need to do it online. And online, there's a lot of help that goes with online. You can hover the questions over the questions to get more detailed information. There's an 800 number that you can call. It's a really easy, it's an easier form than it was maybe even 30 years ago, 30 years, 20 years ago. This will take you about 40 to 45 minutes to complete with everything in front of you. Now, once you complete the FAFSA form, these are the types of financial aid branches, so to speak, that you would qualify for. So, or could, I should say, scholarships and grants, federal work-study programs, federal direct loans, Perkins loans, direct plus loans for your parents, and additional institution loans. Institution loans are just another word for school loans, okay? Offered by the school themselves. So we're going to break this down a little bit, but before we do, again, FAFSA opens October 1st. Do it online. You have to apply annually. Remember, it's free. No one should charge for this. And what you should do at the end of this, once you get your student record and your expected family contribution, you should start getting admissions and award letter offers. So Again, we're going to be talking about the award letters in a few minutes. So, how do you determine what you need to go to college? Okay, when you get an award letter from a school after you've been accepted, um, it can be very easy to read or very difficult to read. And we just have to be aware of the subject matter that we're looking at. This slide represents a very boiled down, easy to read award letter. And you know, this is I think there's a big problem in this country because you know the government knows that these things are very difficult to read, and they published a really good white paper to guide schools on how to write an award letter. But the problem is only a third of colleges and universities follow the format. The other 2/3 do not, and it becomes very murky and muddy. So just for the sake of discussion, I have the University of Success up here. And to go to this school, the cost of attendance is $20,000. This student received an award of $10,000. So in my mind, you would just take the $10,000 from the 20 and your remaining need is $10,000, right? So that's what you have to either finance or pay out of pocket for. But when you look closely, that cost of attendance, you really have to make sure what's included in that cost of attendance, because some schools just list tuition and fees. They don't include books, room and board, food, all of the other things that go in the cost of attendance, in my opinion. So let's say if you know you are looking at this award letter and you're thinking, oh, it's going to cost me $20,000 to get into this school every year. That's doable. And then come July, when you have to make the tuition payment, it's up to $40,000. Wow, that's a big, you know, kick in the head, right? So just make sure you understand what that cost of attendance covers. Some award letters are very clear, other ones are very basic like this, okay? Then there are the federal loans that we'll get into in a few minutes, subsidized and unsubsidized. Don't forget, those are loans. You have to pay them back, right? That's not free money. A lot of students think that the subsidized federal loan means that it's free. It's not. It's not free money. You have to pay that money back. School grants, that's basically free, but we're going to talk a little bit more about what to look for in grants. State scholarship, that's great. That is free money. The only thing you have to worry about there is how financial aid officers take that into account with your financial aid package. And federal work study program, which we will be speaking to in a moment. So how much do you really need when you read your award letter? Okay, so there's the fixed cost, like I said, tuition and fees. There's the flexible cost, the books, the food, the room and board, okay? However, when you get an award letter, what you should be aware of is that it's not written in stone. Never think that it's written in stone, okay? Because when they put together an award package for you, they are taking information from the FAFSA report based on your taxes from about 1.5 to 2 years ago, okay? A lot can happen in 2 years, okay? Especially during COVID, right? You see a lot of parents have lost their jobs, okay? And if you're submitting your FAFSA form based on income of 2 years versus today, big difference, right? The financial aid officer doesn't know what they don't know. They only read what is off of that FAFSA form. So if things happen to your family's income, you can certainly appeal the award letter, okay? If there's a loss of income, a divorce, escalating debt, it could be as simple as me taking care of my mother at home, having another child in private elementary school, and now my daughter is going to a college. You need to explain what your family situation is, and don't take the award letter at face value. Never do. Okay, you're also going to have to figure out how you're going to pay that unmet need, right? Other income. How are we going to do it? Are we going to take it away from a 529 plan, if we're going to take tap into our home equity, or we're going to set something up on tuition payment plans. All of these questions can be navigated through the help of your credit union or a financial planner, an accountant, especially if you have all these options. So make sure you have a discussion with those people prior to making financial decisions, right? So the choices that we make along the way really do matter, okay? So I'm going to show you a few ways to sort of reduce your flexible expenses and see if that can't make a difference. Now, 1 year worth of savings might not mean a lot to you, but you need to multiply that by 4 years or 5 years in school, and it does make a difference. It minimizes the need for those loans, right? $4,000 or $5,000 less in loans, definitely take that. So the first expense that you could save money on, and I preface this with saying that incoming freshmen do have their hands tied with a lot of this because schools will make certain things mandatory. But after the freshman year, sophomore, juniors, seniors, they have a lot more flexibility in how they can approach expenses. So the first line item, rent, which is room and board, right? Incoming freshmen, this virtual environment, we'll see what happens with that. We're starting to see parents putting some deposits down and the schools having them sign a non-refundable clause because of COVID-19. So parents, just be aware of what's going on with those deposits, right? But the only way that you could save on room and board is, let's say if a student wants to partake in a suite, like 3 other people in a suite, that reduces the cost, right? But in year 2, 3, and 4, they might be an RA and help out at the residence, right? And get that all waived. Or they can live off campus or live with their parents, right? Those are the ways to actually save money. With food, okay, first year, your student is going to be presented with cafeteria plan A, which is the Cadillac of plans. It feeds probably 2 people. But in year 2, 3, and 4, they're going to be presented with cafeteria plan A, B, C, and D, right? D being the lowest, ramen, noodles, rice, beans, all of that. Just be aware. I did have one student was pretty creative in that she, her first year, she didn't use all her credits for food, so she sold them to someone that would probably eat more, like someone on the football team, the track team, anyone that needs more energy from food, and something that you can consider. Now, some universities will allow you to do that, some others won't, but it is a creative way to sort of get around those food costs. Books. The average cost of a book is anywhere between $250 to $350 new, depending on the major, right? That is a lot of money, okay? And there are ways to save. You don't have to buy a new book from the university. You can look to buy used. You could look to rent a book on Amazon. I think they rent it now for $6 a month. Or use your iPad and download books for a lot less money. Whatever you do, make sure you okay it with the professor. You just want to make sure you have the latest and greatest in information, especially if you're in technology or a medical major. You want the latest and greatest. Now, remember I said that it was vital for students to put away some money, whether it's $5 a week or a month. There's another creative concept here that could save college students money. And it's basically skin in the game. So though that money that they have saved over the course of 4 or 5 years, whether it's $500 or $5,000, they can use that in terms of having a conversation with their professor and asking them, look, your books are really expensive. I know that books are expensive, and I was wondering if there is a way that you could help me reduce the cost of books for your class. I do have a book account that I've been saving since XYZ, and I was wondering if you could help me out. And professors are really open to that. Most professors will buy books and put them aside because they know how expensive they are, and they'll let people, just use their books for free. But it's easier if a student can approach the professor with skin in the game. So just another tip for you. Personal expenses, just be careful where those expenses are coming from. Um, there's a terminology, excess funding, okay, that I want to share with you. And this is where students do get in trouble. Okay, so when you have the cost of attendance, you get your funding from many different sources. Most of us get it from private student loans or federal student loans. And what happens is the school puts it in the student's account and takes out their tuition and fees. And let's say if a student lives off campus and they use the extra money for paying rent, which is legitimate, right? It makes sense. But sometimes schools attach a debit card to that account, or they set up their own. You can set up your own debit card attached to this account, and a student will use that debit card to maybe buy a cup of coffee at the Starbucks. They just funded that cup of coffee for 10, 20, 25 years. They just have to be aware of where the funds are coming from. It's not just because it's sitting in an account, it's earning interest somewhere else, right? So just be aware of your personal expenses. Transportation, you really can't move the needle on that. Maybe getting a bus pass, but you can really save money over a course of a year with the little choices that you make, right? And thereby avoiding student loans. Let me cover this. Okay, so your credit union approaches financial aid with a value-based approach. So always get that free money first. Grants, scholarships, tuition discounting, cheap money second, federal direct loans, and then the gap, the unmet need. Where are you going to get that money from? Is it from a 529 plan, private loans, federal loans? So this is what they try to encourage. We talked about scholarships and grants. Grants, the only thing that I would have to worry about with grants is that they do have stipulations attached to them. So be aware of that on your award letter. If they don't have anything on your award letter, make sure you talk to your financial aid officer. These are just some examples of federal grants out there found on the studentaid.ed.gov site. And don't forget, you'll have this slide at the end of the presentation sent to you. Federal Work Study Program, what that is free money. It provides your student with a part-time job, it's usually on campus. It's first come, first serve, and they're paid at least minimum wage, and it's for expenses, okay? If you want to get to sign up for federal work study, you just answer yes or no on the FAFSA form. That's how you can get it. Just be mindful, though, that if your student does get the opportunity for federal work study and they change their mind and they rather concentrate on their grades because maybe the work study program is too much, just realize that that $2,000 or that $2,500 that was awarded for expenses is now gone, right? So you're going to have to supplement that somehow. Tuition payments is another tuition payment plan is another way. It's sort of like a short-term interest-free solution that takes your school bill and splits it into smaller amounts payable over a number of months. It's usually payable over a 10-month period. There is a fee that comes with this. You can check it out at the university's website. There is different plans under the bursar's office that you can apply for. Now, what this does is that you're not going to put your whole unmet need on this, of course not, but you might take $1,000 of your bill, put it on this short-term payment plan, and split it over 10 months. That's $100. maybe you pay 50, the student pays 50. That's you know, $1,000 less in student loans. You multiply that over 4 years, that's $4,000 less that you have to finance, right? So just another way of saving money. Federal loans. Okay, these are loans made by the government directly to the student, not to the parent. Okay, they must be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. They have to have their high school diploma or GED. They've got to be enrolled in an eligible program seeking a degree or certificate, and they have to be making satisfactory academic progress. So no slipping of grades, because they will stop the funding of these loans to you. There are two types of direct loans. There are the subsidized and the unsubsidized. The subsidized is awarded to eligible students based on financial need. Okay, so it means that the government pays the interest while the student is in school at a fixed rate right now at 2.75 plus a loan fee of 1.057. These terms are stupendous. You never want to say no to these loans. I am telling you, it is unbelievable. These are the lowest rates that I've ever seen the federal government, at least in my lifetime. The term on these are 10 years with a 6-month grace period. So what does that mean? Once the student graduates, they have 6 months reprieve from making payments, and then after 6 months, they have to start making payments. The unsubsidized loan is awarded to all eligible students, and it's not based on need. Okay, so student has to make the interest payments on this, but they can defer it until after graduation. And the interest rate is the same as the subsidized. Now, the limits on these loans are very low in terms of the cost of attendance, unfortunately. So incoming freshmen, the most that they can get in unsubsidized debt is $5,500. If they do have a financial need, they could get up to $3,500, and the rest could be $1,500, right? So I just have the credit lines here of the loan limits, I should say loan limits of the sophomores, the juniors and seniors, right? Independent students have a little bit more. Independent students, though, are usually graduate students, people in the military, people that are married, okay? Just because an 18-year-old's parents won't pay the bill for college doesn't mean that they are an independent student, just to note. Now, there are other loan options in funding this gap, okay? One of the other loan options that I wanted to talk about for parents on the line is this PLUS loan, the parent loan for undergraduate students. So the government gives you this loan. You should be able to find this on the financial award letter that your student receives in the spring, okay? And it is score-based, okay? But the loan is not made in the student's name at all, only for the parents. Okay, you can't transfer this over to the student after they graduate. It is yours for 10 years, okay? The allure of this loan is that the borrowing limit is just the cost of attendance less any financial aid award. So there is no limit, right? The interest rate is fixed at 5.30%, and the origination fee is 4.228. Now, the cost of that origination fee is high, and you can finance it into that loan. And again, this term is 10 years, and repayment begins immediately, 60 days after disbursement, or you can ask for a deferment right away on that while your child is in school, okay? If a parent is denied at any time for this PLUS loan, it does mean that the student is eligible for more financial aid. So make sure you have a discussion with the finance department of your college. Now, private student loans are another option for financing higher education. It should not be replacing at all the federal direct loans for your students because, again, like I said, never say no to the federal direct loan for your student. Rates on private student loans are set by a credit union, a bank, a fintech company, and it's typically based on either a prime rate or what we call LIBOR rate. Most of them are based on prime now. Origination fees vary from either 0% to 3%, although I've only seen them at 0% around here. Repayment terms can be anywhere from 10 years to 25 years. And they do require a co-borrower that meets the FICO and the debt to income requirements because most 18-year-olds don't have that on their credit report, right? And these payments can be deferred as well. So your credit union offers a private student loan solution, which is pretty unique. It is a line of credit structure. They can borrow up to $75,000 for the entire undergraduate career. So they only have to apply once, okay? So that is super convenient. And it is only eligible for 4-year colleges and universities that are not for profit. So basically, if they participate in financial aid, there's what's called the Title IV school, and they're eligible. Now, we do have a list of approved schools on the Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union's website that I will show you in a minute. And their rates are variable and as low as 7%. Now, they do not have any origination fees or prepayment penalties, so you can pay this loan off at any time. They do offer a 0.25% rate discount with automatic payments. They can go either 20 or 25-year term, depending on the dollar amount that the student graduates with. And they can offer full deferment while the student is in school. Now, there is a nifty co-borrower release option on this. That's really good to know when you're comparing this private student loan to the parent loan, right? Parent loan is for 10 years. The co-borrower release could be, you could be off as little as 4 years, okay? So something for us to consider, especially those that are considering retirement. You can make your payment towards principal and interest. And there is what's called a graduated repayment available for graduates. It's only offered right after graduation. And what this feature does is it takes this 20 or this 25-year term that they might have, it extends it out for 40 years to make the payments really small. And then after 2 years' time, it reverts back to the original term year, whether it's 18 years or 23 years. Now, the reason for this is, and I only recommend you using it to protect your credit, is that in this economy, it's getting harder and harder for graduates to find jobs, and we don't want to damage their credit, right? So if they get out of school and they're having trouble procuring a job, I would recommend a graduated repayment available. And as soon as they find a job, they can go back to the way they used to make payments, right? That's the only time I would use that feature, is to protect my credit. Now, I've talked a lot about a lot of features here, and I think the best resource that you could get your hands on is going to your credit union's website. And I've provided that link above on this slide. Now, what you'll see is once you go there, you'll see basically 4 buttons across the screen, or you can call the 800 number. There's your rates button, your pre-approved school list, your frequently asked questions button is usually questions pertaining to the underwriting process of the loan. How much money do I need to make? Do I need a co-signer? All of those things. And there's the resource button for you and your students that'll give you access to blogs and little video snippets of the college process. There's a job search function out there. There's a lot of good information. But finally, before I leave, I want to bring your attention to another resource that is free to you. On this slide, you see Mass Mutual's logo on the upper left-hand corner of this slide. If under that logo, you'll see a drop-down menu, which is planning for college. You click on that drop-down menu, And the last option is a college access counselor. So any questions that you might have pertaining to scholarships, getting into college, which college you should get, cost of attendance, refinancing, anything that you need is there for you in terms of someone will answer your email. Now, she will also answer, because she's a live person, she will answer your questions verbally. You can schedule a time to talk to her over the phone. She has her scheduler out there, and she'll do consultations. It usually takes 30 to 45 minutes. So I would encourage you to go out there and utilize the tools, because the more information you have, like I said, the more money you will save over time. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully this has been helpful to you. Jackie, do we have any questions that have come through?
We do. All right, so we'll start with Andrew's question. He said, my son is a senior. He wants to push off applying to colleges until next year. He will not attend college for the 21-22 year. Does he need to complete the current FAFSA, or should he wait a year to complete?
I would wait on, before I say anything, I'm going to preface this with always talk to the college that you are dealing with, especially during COVID time, because it could be different. They have different deadlines now. They have different requirements. So I would definitely, number one, reach out to the financial aid office. My guess, my educated guess, is that he won't have to fill that out until next year, until the fall of next year. But again, double check with your school.
Great. The next question is from Angie. When you speak of more than one deposit, is multiple applications, fees paid, also potentially an issue?
No, fees paid for a college application, you can pay as many and do as many college applications as you want. It's the actual deposits. When May 1st comes, they're going to ask you for a deposit for a school. You know, you've made a decision, you want to go there. If you've made multiple deposits to cover your bases, so to speak, that's when the problem comes. But you can apply to as many schools as you want. I would preface that with saying, you don't want to apply to 20 schools. Again, they talk to each other. And if the names start, becoming normal, you might want to try to avoid that. But for the most part, the application fees are separate than the deposit fees, right? The deposit fees come in the spring when you have to make a commitment. And if you have more than a few deposits out there, that's when they start getting nervous. But for, I would say a normal, I've seen students apply anywhere from 3 to 5 schools. Obviously, you want to put in at least a private school in there, and a high reach school, so a school that you think that you might not be able to get into, because I'm telling you, this year and probably next year, it's amazing to see. I'm starting to see colleges like GW take in a different kind of student. They're not just honing in now on GPAs. They're looking at the full picture because of COVID. So yeah, I would say 3 to 5 applications out there.
Awesome. And her second question is, where or when would a person explain their financial situation to possibly be a factor in their award?
I believe, and you have an explanation box that you can give additional information on the FAFSA form. If it is not found there, you can also talk to the financial aid officer once you receive your award letter, okay? When you receive your award letter, that's the time to talk to people. There's a couple of times to talk to people, actually. There's a time to talk right after you receive your award letter, number one. Number two, you're also going to talk to people probably mid-June, first 2 weeks of June, I would say. Again, depending on this COVID thing, most colleges, I hopefully will go back to normal, and the normal deadline would be May 1st, right? So the reason why I say talk to them twice, okay? Once, if you don't agree with your financial aid package because your income has changed for whatever reason. And number two, even if your income hasn't changed, call them probably mid-June, because what happens is now they have their roster, their student enrollment locked. They know who's coming for the fall semester. So all of those people that have denied their admissions, they have free money. They have free financial aid, right? They have a pile of money they're sitting on that they can now divvy up to the students again. So I would always reach out a second time. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. All right, the next question is from Melanie. If I have completed a previous FAFSA for a different student, do I need to create a new account or can I use the existing one?
You have to create a new account for each student.
All right. Nicole's question is, do you have any recommendations on how to look for a college when the student doesn't know what they want to major in?
That's a really good question, and I have a couple of different thoughts. If the student doesn't know what kind of major they want to get into, this is a huge investment. Number one, obviously, I don't have to tell you that, right? And we're seeing a lot of students take this year off. That's obviously another pro of COVID. They're taking it off to really explore other options, so that they make sure once they go to school, they know, they're comfortable at the direction that they're going to. But I would definitely, the first stop is always the high school guidance counselor, right? They have these aptitude tests that they would give the student, as well as you can go online and take these tests to see what you're most suited for a major. I would say also make sure they partake of virtual college fairs, because I think that just listening to other people partake in college fairs and asking questions might spark some interest. So I would really start with the virtual college fair, and see what's out there. Maybe that'll generate some direction and some insight as to where he or she wants to go.
Thank you. And our last question is from Maria. How can students get college app fees waived, or are there programs that can assist with the cost?
Yes, good question. I would say first go to the financial aid office of the college that you're dealing with, number one, and explain your situation. They have many programs out there. Many times they do waive fees, especially if it's a needs-based request. Number two, if you go to these virtual college fairs, or if there is an actual college fair at the high school, and you sign up on the school's list to receive emails or mailings, make sure you open up every envelope that you're going to get from them, because sometimes they have a waiver, an application waiver in those envelopes or that email. So make sure you click on the email, open it up, read it to see if there's a waiver, or open up that mail, and then finally ask your financial aid officer to see if they can waive that fee for you.
Great. Thank you. Those were all the questions that we had in the chat. Unless anyone else has any questions, I appreciate you joining our session today. Hopefully it answered a lot of your questions. And if you have any questions after listening to the deck, feel free to send them to member service at massmutualfcu.org, and we can definitely follow up with you there. Otherwise, do you have any closing comments, Suzanne?
No, I appreciate my time spent. I know that I went over, but I think that this is a really important time, and it's an exciting time for family and students, and just try to enjoy it. I know there's a lot of questions out there, but your credit union is there to help you through it, navigate it, and they can definitely reach out to me at any time if there are any other specific questions. So thank you, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.